Can I first of all apologise that I'm a little late in starting, but I don't want to apologise completely because it was a real pleasure to meet the members of the gallery that have travelled out to join us. A very warm welcome to our Cabinet meeting this evening. I'm assuming most of you are here for item 5. We've just got some other business to do before that. We're going to do it succinctly and promptly, and then we'll get to item 5, and I'll explain at that point what's going on. So bear with us while we just do these first 4 items, but a very warm welcome to Rushmore. Now, first item is to approve the minutes of the last meeting. So proposer and seconder. There we go, hands up all over the place. It's amazing what a few cameras do. Right, so we've got proposer and seconder, and we'll sign the minutes later. Right, item number 2 is revision to discretionary rate relief. Gareth Lyon, Cabinet Member for Concessions and Community Support. Gareth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. Should give Cabinet some comfort that I'm not proposing to read through all 55 pages of the report and appendices here. Essentially, this is part of the tidying up exercise we've been doing over the last 18 months, looking at what rate reliefs we've got in place, making sure we're getting best value for the taxpayer and maximising the impact that we have on the front line. This is really just one of the last pieces in that tidying up, which is looking at the powers that we've got under the Localism Act to expand the scope of those that we can support where we see there is good value for the borough in the form of business rates. We will, of course, examine each application very, very closely, but this does mean that we don't have to fall back on hardship relief when we can see that there's actually greater ongoing social value in something like a social enterprise, a sports club, a social club, and that sort of thing, where it is clearly delivering value to the community. And obviously we'll continue to be as rigorous as possible to make sure that we're not wasting anyone's money in that respect. But I think it's a good bit of policy work, and it gives us another tool in the box for how we can support the local community. So I commend the policy.
Great. Any questions, Member Ken?
Thank you very much, Chair. I just really want to welcome this for the small business fraternity, because up until now, where you get a small business that's providing an essential service to our residents, their only route was the hardship relief. So congratulations to our officers and to Gareth for bringing this forward. I'm fully supportive.
Great. No other speakers. Those in favour of amending this policy or approving this policy, all show. Those against? Great. Excellent. Thank you very much. Right. Item 3, Treasury Management. Paul Taylor, our responsible adult.
Thank you, Chairman, for that repeated kind introduction. Thank you. I'm assuming that this isn't 56 pages, but it's quite a few pages, so I'm assuming that you will all be familiarised yourself with the contents. It's a regular report, review of the past 6 months Treasury Management operations, which mainly concerns investments, really, to actually keep our funds incoming. Council's overall investment holding will reduce over time, as we have to utilise these funds rather than borrow for capital expenditure purposes. Because where councils have capital to spend, they're supposed to spend that rather than borrowing. We do expect, however, to continue to hold the majority of our pooled funds because these do provide reasonable revenue return. The report has said is fairly standard. The policy hasn't changed. We carry on the same prudential and prudent way that we have done. There's one thing to note, however, paragraph 5.2, where there's a statement from our advisors, Arlene Close. They actually list the fact that obviously we should change where we think we might need to review or sell some pooled funds to change it for something better. We should do so. And we have actually, since this report, have actually disposed of our holding in the Aberdeen Target Return Fund as the capital value of this fund has not held up over time. It's one of those, I'm afraid, we all meet even in our own personal investments. It just hasn't performed as well as it might have done. So we have taken the money out of that and also surrendered a bit of our CCLA property fund, which has done very well, but actually reduces our reliance on property a bit. So the combination of those two, which we achieved a very good price on the CCLA part, and invested in a different area, pooled funds, which should benefit us more. So that is just proving that we are, the finance department particularly, look at these to make sure that we don't miss out on opportunities and we maintain our return. As one other thing, it says currently we are looking at our response to the consultation on Prudential and Treasury Management Codes. Doesn't sound very exciting, does it? Well, it isn't very exciting, but it has to be done, which are likely to tighten regulation on wider investments, which includes investment properties. That's in the government's hands, it's out for consultation at the moment, so we're hoping it doesn't limit us too much, but obviously we will have to work that one out when we come to it. Obviously, it's in government's hands to some extent, the consultation, and we await the outcome of that. There is nothing else really to report on this unless there's any questions, but I just recommended to Cabinet to note the report.
Yep. Right. Barbara Hurst, then Gareth.
Just one very quick question. Was this subject to the peer challenge review?
No.
Yeah, mine was on a similar theme with the peer challenge, because I understand that it's been actually very, very positive about how we've been managing our finances, but there were some recommendations, I believe, about how we present and scrutinise the figures as members, and I'm just wondering when we're likely to see those changes for reporting happening.
The recommendations that the peer challenge mainly centred on was actually the budget process, not this process. This is behind just the basic investments, but it was more the budgeting, how we show the budgets, the reserves, etc., and that point of view. So I mean, it'll come into it indirectly, but it wasn't featured as a main part of their review.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things, just to elaborate a little bit on this, because members of the public just might be interested, is that our finances here are very heavily regulated. We've got lots of rules. We had a peer challenge that they're talking about, and the peer challenge was some people from another authority, officers and members, came to our authority and looked at how we run the local authority and what we do, and they come up with some recommendations. And we've agreed that we're going to publish that in full. We're not hiding anything. We're putting it on the website, and we're going to be very open about where we need to improve and strengthen things. So that's what the peer review is. But generally, they were very happy with the approach that the council takes. And our finances aren't anything to worry about at the moment. So thank you. Members, note the reports. Great, thank you very much. Right, item number 4, Farnborough Airport Community Environment Fund, Councillor Martin Tennant, Environment.
Thank you, Chair. Members will have seen the appendix attached from page 73. Another good application. The criteria which we utilise involves environmental improvement, location in relation to the airport runway, and we also look to find that at least some of the funding has been secured from other sources. The Friends of Ansell's Farm, although not in our borough, are within the distance of 5 kilometres, 3 miles from the centre of the runway, and hit all the criteria which we'd want to see fulfilled for a successful application. So, without going through the whole document at length, I'm sure members have read it, and I'm happy to take any questions. I recommend that we grant for the project.
Right, questions? Gareth, and then Ken.
Thank you. And I'm going to be supporting the recommendation here. It's just, I think it might be useful if we were to, after these projects have come to completion, if it was possible to get a report back, even if it was just pictures of what it's looking like in practice, to see the impact that our money's having, even though it's technically not our money.
I'm very keen to do that. I've been invited to the opening of various projects and seen the positive outcomes which have occurred from an environmental and an outdoor play perspective. I'm very happy to bring those back to maybe an informal cabinet for other cabinet members to see.
Ken.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm going to be a little parochial and ask, are we planning on making efforts to make our own Rushmore-based organisations more aware of this fund, please?
Thank you, Ken. Yes, we've made extensive efforts to ensure that everybody within the distance set down is aware of it. We're seeing multiple applications from some organisations, which we prefer to spread it out more evenly. We've advertised it to local schools, clubs. Every time we grant some money, there is a press release which goes out. So more and more people are aware of the fund and the potential access to that fund. We receive a number of applications over any given period of time. I look at those and I only bring forward ones which I feel meet the criteria. So there are applications which do come forward which perhaps you're not aware of, which just don't meet the criteria.
Barbara's got a question.
Yes, I'm particularly pleased here to see this as partnership working. And I just wonder how vigorously we encourage that partnership working when anybody is putting in an application, because together we can achieve so much more than we can on our own.
Absolutely. The vigorous approach we take to ensuring that partnership working goes hand in hand with these applications. We also expect to see other mechanisms of fundraising, not just the tag fund being used, and that's been my criteria which I've used on every application to date. So by default that involves multiple organisations because grants are coming from different places. As you can see from this one here, the secured ones include Heart Lottery, HCC Councillor Grant. They've done some fundraising themselves. So by ensuring not all the funds come from us, it ensures that a larger selection of people are involved in the successful completion of a project. And every grant the Cabinet has approved in the last 2 years have involved only partial funding. So there's been funding coming from other places in all applications.
Thank you.
Excellent. Happy? So, Cabinet are asked to approve this grant that Martin's recommended. All those in favour? Any against? No? Great. Thank you. So that's recommended. Right, members of the gallery, we are pleased to say that we've come to item number 5, which most of you are here for. What I'm going to do is just briefly outline what's going to happen so you know exactly what's going on this evening. So we're going to get this covers 2 portfolios, our environment and our leisure. So we always have the Cabinet members introducing their items. So we've got 2 cabinets, Cabinet portfolios covered by this tonight. They will be introducing that item. Then we've got Diane Bedford, who's sat directly in front of me, that's going to bring back a report from the panel meeting that took place that made some recommendations to come to the Cabinet. What we'll do is after that, we've also had a petition that was discussed at Council that's been presented to the Cabinet, and we're making note and reference of the petition that was signed by 2,366 local people. We had an excellent presentation given by the lead petitioner at Council, after which that was debated. The motion of the Council, when that was debated, was that that should be forwarded on to us, and that we should consider very carefully decisions that we make tonight in light of that petition handed in by residents, which I can assure everybody we definitely will be. So we're going to have the 6 people. We've got 4 groups of people, 6 people in total, that have requested to address Cabinet. We've done that. We've accepted their request, and so we've got 4 groups that are going to come up, and I'm going to invite them up, and they've got 5 minutes where they give their presentation and then return to their seats. Now, following that, at that point, what I'm going to do is, when we've had that presentation, I'm minded that we just introduce everybody that's taking part in the debate here, so that you, members of the public, know who's who. So at that point, at the close of those presentations, I'm just going to get the Cabinet to introduce themselves, and the officers, probably in reverse order, the officers that are here that are giving us our legal and professional advice, who will be part of the cross-examination this evening before we make a decision. So that is how we're going to take this forward. So starting off then, introduction by Martin and then Morris to this particular item, and then we'll take it forward as I've just explained. Now, before we just go further, we did have problems with the sound system. I want to make absolutely sure that everybody, including those sat at the back, can see us. I can see the big screens working at the back, but importantly can also hear us. So can you just wave at the back that you can hear us? Yeah, good. Sounds good, yeah? Okay, excellent. Great, thank you very much. Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. So as all the members are fully aware, the item in front of us this evening is to discuss the future of Southwood Golf Course whilst considering representations we've received through the consultation period, the petition, and comments from the joint scrutiny panel of Environment and Leisure and Youth. We've got a complex issue in front of us tonight. Members are fully aware of all the aspects and connotations of this. I can't emphasise enough how important it is that we consider all the information and make a judgment as individual members based on the information in front of us today. And, you know, the decisions which we will make will have consequences and affect numerous people in numerous different ways. So we need to fully put some thought and effort and debate into this. Thank you, Chairman.
Morris, our leisure portfolio member.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I guess firstly I'd like to thank everyone who has taken part in the Southwood consultation. I am delighted that so many people have engaged with the consultation process by attending our drop-in events, the public meeting, and sharing their thoughts and opinions with us. Consultation is an important part of the democratic process. Making any decision about a future for a leisure facility is not an easy decision. It's not taken lightly. We have carefully considered all the options that are available to us. We have looked at alternate possible sites, but the key fact for us is that we, as a council, our priorities have to be, 1, regeneration of our town centres, and 2, we need to build more houses. And to build more houses, we need to set aside land so that people are encouraged away from the special protection areas and into natural parkland. Now, as I said at full council, this is an opportunity for us to review the golf course at Southwood and see whether it does still meet the needs of the local population, or whether there is a better and alternate use for that. The report is set out before us. I'm looking forward to hearing the presentations from members of the public as well. I think for the moment that's probably where I need to leave it now.
Great. Right, thank you very much. We've got Diane Bedford, who chaired the joint panel. Not quite so good sound system that evening, was there?
No.
But we've got a recommendation made from that panel to come to this one. So, Diane.
Thank you, members, and thank you for the gallery here tonight. I think really to say these are the main points because it's a very large report. The joint panel meeting was established given the direct interest of both the environmental and leisure and youth panels in this issue. We have agreed to set the meeting up, so that the panels could receive a detailed presentation, which we had, on the background to the issue, the consultation, and to consider the merits of the proposal. The Cabinet members for the Environment and the Service Delivery and Leisure and Youth were in attendance and responded to questions. The Head of Community and Environmental Services gave a very comprehensive presentation, and we heard from 4 people who made representations to the panel. During the meeting, the main issues that were drawn out by members and from the representations were as follows. First of all, the recognition that the Council needs to secure additional SANGs in order for development to take place. The area released by Southwood Golf Course would provide SANG with a suitable catchment to enable development in Aldershot Town Centre. The SANG required to enable the number of dwellings proposed could potentially be met from alternative sites. A government consultation was currently being undertaken, which could reduce the housing requirement, and the outcome from the consultation should be heard before making any decisions. However, when this would be and the outcome was uncertain. It is also noted that many golfers from Southwood would not be able to play at other courses in the area due to increased cost to them and also limited availability. Also, that the Council could try to influence government to amend the SANG requirement and allow some flexibility in how it was applied. I believe that we gave the issue the detailed consideration and time it deserved, and having heard the arguments, the joint panel review that a decision should be deferred for 12 months, whilst all other options should be pursued. They voted 8 for and 6 against. The details are set out in the joint panel report, and as chairman, I support this view. I would therefore ask the Cabinet to have regard to the decision of the panel, which represents a practical and effective way forward at this current time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Diane. So we've got a recommendation from the panel that we defer for 12 months, which members can discuss with the officers. So I just want to remind members of the Cabinet that we're making notes as we go through here because we want to thoroughly scrutinise the items that are raised. Right, now we've also, I just want to check that all members of the Cabinet have seen, you were at Council, you have received a copy of the petition and you've read through it and understand the implications of it. Yep. So we've got that we need to take consideration of, as well as the recommendation from Diane's panel. So we've got that. Now, I'm going to move on to the representations from the members of the public. I'm going to go in a slightly different order because one is on their way and I do want them to have the opportunity. So I'm going to tap them on the end and hopefully we'll see them turn up and they can come straight in. So I'm going to ask Mike Bartley, Barry Gilmore and Keith Ledgerwood to come up and introduce themselves and who they represent, and then 5 minutes from there. Okay, so welcome, Mike, Barry and Keith. Is it all right to call you by your first name? Good, thank you.
Intro's in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name's Mike Bartley. I've been a local resident all of my life, and I've been a member of Southwark Golf Course for the last 25 years or more. And I think we're speaking for all three of us. We're representing not only the golf course, its members, but also local residents and the community.
Good evening. I'm Barry Gilmore. I'm a Rushmore resident of 20 years. And I'm representing the golf club, or golf course as well.
My name's Keith Ledgerwood, or Kip Ledgerwood. I lived in Rushmore for 50-odd years, and I've played golf at Southwood for about 20-odd years. Get started?
Yep.
Right. This presentation is made, as we've just said, on behalf of Southwood golf users, their families, local residents who wish to see the course remain open. On the 7th of November, the joint panel voted that a decision to close the course be held off for a year. This postponement would provide time to lobby government to modify this, what we consider to be a nonsensical and ultimately doomed policy of requiring SANG. It would also provide time to persuade Natural England to take cognizance of the special case that Rushmore represents with its high urbanisation, and for them to exercise some flexibility with the ratios and metrics that they recommend. Now, we can't cover all the important points that we made last time, so let me concentrate on additional developments since our last presentation. A most significant development has been that Hart has made available the SANG at Bramshot Farm, and we'll be talking about that later. Also, independently, the BBC undertook a national review which clearly shows the level of urbanisation across boroughs throughout the country, and it demonstrates how unreasonable it is to expect Rushmore to be able to provide SANG when it is already highly urbanised, and much more so than any of our surrounding boroughs, and with far less available land to provide as SANG. Surely a powerful additional argument to put to Natural England and to government during any lobbying. We've also seen a recent message from Mac Trading, acknowledging their late entry into this matter and offering over the coming months to investigate the possibility of mixed SANG and golf course using their own consultants to explore options. Now, Barry and I recently attended a meeting at which Natural England, up till now more elusive than the Dartford Warbler, made an appearance. We were totally unimpressed by their contributions, but we were pleased to see that through his insistence, Councillor Tennant was successful in persuading the meeting to charge Natural England with the task of seeking alternative mitigation methods. Surely we should wait to see what they come up with, and we understand the next meeting is due in February. Now, as well as the publicity from the current Olympic gold medalist, Justin Rose, are you going to ignore the support from Prince Harry for our war veterans in the home of the British Army and overlook the prestige that you may lose if you get rid of a facility that supported David Scott to win an Invictus gold medal? Now, we're grateful for Leo Doherty's parliamentary questions, which received a reply on the 1st of November 2017 from the Housing and Planning Minister, Alok Sharma. And amongst his response, he said, Natural England positively encourage the use of existing leisure facilities if they are seen as meeting the requirements to provide suitable alternative natural green space. And importantly, Alok Sharma has, according to his own website, worked with local campaign groups to fight unsustainable development. We believe that the sustainability of further development in Rushmore should similarly be challenged. So with all these factors, we implore you to adhere to normal council protocol by following the joint panel recommendation and delay this decision for a year. And importantly, we must not forget that as well as losing this community asset, we're concerned about the potential loss of employment for about 7 full-time equivalent staff. Surely this can be avoided. Now, looking at what we already have in this area, Rushmore is blessed with a lot of natural green spaces for recreation and dog walking. These sites are never overcrowded with queues of dog walkers. And as far as we're concerned, converting southward would just create one more dog walking area. The current SANG policy merely tries to dissuade people from dog walking on spas by providing alternative dog walking elsewhere. Natural England research shows that dog walkers only want to use their nearest parks for dog walking. Merely trying to dissuade them by offering additional alternatives is unlikely to make them change. So if the council, or Natural England for that matter, are determined to protect species on the spa, then they should consider more directed and possibly punitive methods, which would be more effective. Now, we understand that the options within the borough to create SANG are finite. The council owns the golf course land, so the easy option is to shut it down. But is it the right option? If the only way to build new housing is to remove public recreational facilities, isn't something fundamentally wrong? More people with fewer recreational options does not make sense and would result in a lower quality of life for all. Now, which council-owned land is next on the list for conversion to SANG? Is it the football club, the Cove Green allotments? Who knows? Where does it stop? And what has to happen to make the council say enough is enough? Now, on the next slide, we had previously wanted to talk about important social wellbeing benefits of the golf course, but as we are restricted for time, we're not going to be covering this tonight, but we would have been happy to pick up any questions. And finally, on the fourth slide, we talked at length previously about what we consider to be misleading statements that have been made, but as we're restricted on time, I'm going to highlight just the one about the fact that the golf course is considered not economically viable by Rushmore Borough Council, who in their statements say that at its peak it attracted around 40,000 rounds of golf, making a profit of 200,000 per annum. We've undertaken a simple pro rata calculation based on about 30,000 rounds, which would indicate that it would still make a profit, albeit reduced in the region of 150,000. We've also calculated, based on the number of season ticket holders and rounds played per year, that the course is generating an estimated annual revenue of around about between 400,000 and 500,000.
I'm going to speak about SANG. This slide summarises various projections to 2032. The first column shows the housing requirement, 7,848 homes delivered by the year 2032. SANG currently exists for around 6,000 homes. The addition of Bramshot Farm and Blandford House will provide enough SANG to exceed the requirement by some 300 homes. The second column shows the council's local plan of around 8,700 homes. The plan acknowledges that it provides sufficient flexibility to meet the requirements in the event of any delay by developers in delivering housing schemes. However, SANG mitigation is required for people, not homes, so an occupancy rate is used as a conversion. 2.4 people per home is the norm, but the homes in the local plan are predominantly 1 or 2 bedroom, so an overall occupancy rate of 2.0 would be a realistic assessment. The joint SANG delivery plan states the average occupancy rate should be assumed to be 2.4 persons per dwelling, unless robust local evidence demonstrates otherwise. Natural England have accepted a rate of 1.98 in Waverley on this basis. This would provide mitigation for 2,700 homes, which is 99% of the local plan. With a slippage of only 91 homes, that would be sufficient to meet the housing requirement in full. The third column shows the recent government consultation requirement, which could reduce the borough's target by some 2,000 homes. The joint panel recommendation to defer a decision for 12 months would allow time for the outcome of this consultation to be known. At present, Rushmore has SANG available for over 6,000 homes. Excluding Wellesley, the remaining homes provide more than 8 years of home building. The joint panel recommendation to defer a decision for 12 months would have no effect on this. There are fewer than 1,400 homes planned up to the year 2021 that require SANG. Bramshot Farm SANG can accommodate all of those homes. The joint panel recommendation to defer a decision for 12 months would have no effect on this either. The next slide. The reason given for converting the course is that its 5-kilometre catchment area is needed to redevelop Aldershot Town Centre. The map shows the borough, its boundary, and the Wellesley development. We highlight the spa areas, which the SANG policy is designed to protect. Bramshot Farm has a radius of 5 kilometres, which is 1.2 kilometres short of Aldershot Centre. Blandford House and Wellesley SANG both reach Aldershot Centre, as does Rowhills. Our Aldershot dog walker is supposedly dissuaded from going to the spa. He could visit Rowhill or Wellesley SANG, both within walking distance, but Southwood is apparently needed to provide mitigation for him, a 5-kilometre drive away. If he drove just a bit further, he could use Bramshot Country Park. Our slide illustrates how ludicrous this is when Natural England visitor survey data shows that half of all interviewees lived within 1.4 kilometres of the SANG where they were interviewed. Arguing that the golf course is needed because Bramshot catchment radius falls 1.2 kilometres short of Aldershot Centre defies all logic. It is the interpretation of the rules by Natural England that is driving this madness. The joint SANG delivery plan states that the catchment of SANG will depend on the individual site characteristics and location. However, the 5-kilometre catchment is being applied rigidly, creating this nonsensical situation. You can see that the SANG within Rushmore overlap extensively, even without the existing 3 SANG being shown. If the golf course is added to the SANG capacity, we will have 7 overlapping catchments within the borough, with a total area of 550 square kilometres, 14 times the area of Rushmore itself. The catchment criteria simply do not work in a borough the size of Rushmore. We are told this issue has been discussed with Natural England, but that they insist on applying inflexible catchment radii. On what basis can they possibly argue this, given that the joint SANG delivery plan, with its sensible recognition of catchment being dependent upon location, was approved by them, Natural England? We empathise with Rushmore planners having to work within the constraints of this rigidly parameter-driven policy, with Natural England as advisors, but without the responsibility for the consequences of their interpretation of the rules. Even worse is the evidence this policy has had in driving up the cost of any land that has the potential to become SANG. We would suggest that the most effective way to increase affordable housing in the borough is to challenge this ludicrous policy rather than take the easy short-term option to close the course. The joint panel recommendation to defer for 12 months would allow time for this. Southwood is the only municipal golf course in the housing market area. It would be a travesty if it was to be sacrificed because of this ludicrous, inflexible, expensive policy. Thank you.
Rushmore Council has stated that there are a number of alternative golf courses where golfers can turn up and play without being members. We strongly disagree with this statement. The other courses in the area either do not let non-members play at a weekend when most people of a working age play, are prohibitively expensive in comparison to the affordable rates at Southwood, have limited or zero availability for membership, are hilly and long and not suitable for those with a disability or the more senior, less mobile golfer. When Southwood Golf Course was established in the late 1970s, golf locally was an elitist sport, only open to the well-off and seen as snobby. The course was established by the council to provide a facility that removed these barriers to entry, to provide golf at an affordable price where anyone could play. Closing the golf course will make the sport far less accessible to the local community and return it to its previous elitist status. Given the lack of alternatives and the 42% of survey respondents that said they would give up golf if the course closes, how does the council reconcile this with its corporate policy to improve the quality of local people's lives and promote health and well-being? A large number of charities and societies use the golf course and raise funds for worthwhile causes. The reason the charities use the course is because of its accessibility, affordability, and hospitality. Over the years, Southwood golfers have raised approaching £500,000 for charities. I'm going to now summarise our deck and the key points we've made this evening. The majority of consultation respondents voted to keep the course. Societies and charities have said they will be badly impacted. Your joint panel voted to defer. Will the council listen to and consider these views? Point 2. Given the council's corporate policy to improve people's lives, what does the council intend to do regarding the 42% of respondents who indicated they would give up golf and whose quality of life is therefore diminished? Point 3. Natural England's survey indicates that 75% of Sang users are dog walkers. Within a small radius of the course, we have 3 Sangs, all accessible to dog walkers. Why persecute golfers to provide even more dog walking space? Point 4. Our view is that the council's 40k subsidy for 175 members statement biased the consultation process. This is evidenced by the 609 who voted for closure. The third most popular theme was, surprisingly, running costs and subsidies, clearly influenced by your statement. Point 5. You say that you need the course as Sang to provide geographical coverage for 740 homes in Aldershot. Natural England's own Sang survey indicates that half of Sang users were less than 1.47 kilometres from home. I think that we've adequately demonstrated how ludicrous the situation is when rigid enforcement of planning guidelines defies what any reasonable person can see as common sense, by proposing that the residents of those homes will drive 5 kilometres to use Southwood as their Sang when they have many closer alternatives available to them. Point 6. The current government consultation closed on the 9th of November with the aim of publishing a revised National Planning Policy Framework in the spring. This new framework could reduce by 32% the housing Rushmore needs to provide. It would seem logical to defer such a critical decision until you understand better the government's direction. As we're going out of order, point 7's slightly changed, but you're going to be hearing later from Andy Short about the lack of affordable alternatives to Southwood. You'll also be hearing from David Scott about the lack of accessible alternatives. Your consultation responses say a significant number of people will stop playing. There are no viable alternate golf courses locally. The decision you make will clearly impact a lot of local residents' lives and well-being. Point 8. Given that the 42% of respondents said they would give up golf, we would contend that those people will be looking for an alternate recreational activity. They could well decide that a walk on the spa is a suitable alternative. We understand the need to get your local plan approved so that developers cannot ride roughshod over you via planning appeals. But as you yourself admit, the available Sang is finite. Even if you convert the course, what comes next? Regardless of your decision tonight, it is clear for all to see that the situation is not sustainable and that something is going to have to change. Why not start now? Increasing the local population and at the same time taking away their recreational facilities cannot be the answer. I'm going to hand back now to Kip to say a few closing words. Thank you.
Okay. You probably say that we've still missed the point and that you have no choice but to apply the government's requirement for house building. But we believe there is an opportunity to influence that if you have the will. You may also say that Natural England dictate all of the terms, but we believe you can try to persuade them that one, SANG is not the best way to protect spas. More proactive measures would be more effective, and while Natural England are charged with looking into it, there's nothing to say that the council can't contribute ideas to that. Also, that the formula that they apply to hectares per person could be adjusted and not followed blindly. We also believe that the catchment radius is only a guideline and not mandatory and should be challenged, given the nonsensical example we've demonstrated. And that the formula for estimating the number of occupants per dwelling could be varied, as it was for Waverley, to 1.9 instead of 2.4. Southwood is a rare municipal asset in which Rushmore should take pride. It provides health and well-being benefits to all social groups. To emulate Justin Rose, for future young golfers, it is an aspirational asset. For all society, David Scott has made it an inspirational asset. Most of all, do you want to be the council that got rid of such a community benefit when it later transpires that you did not need to? If you have the will to consider our views, we implore you to attempt to influence such changes. We hope this consultation exercise has been genuine, and we hope that you will at least uphold the recommendation of the joint panel of the 7th of November. Thank you very much.
There we go. Right, can you hear me now? Yeah, thank you very much to Mike, Barry and Keith. I'm now going to invite William Fry from England Golf. Welcome, William.
Good evening, everyone. So my name's Will. I'm from England Golf. I am the new club support officer for Hampshire. To give you an idea of who England Golf are, for those that don't know, we are the national governing body for amateur golf. We work at the heart of golf in England, supporting and empowering a thriving community of players, counties and clubs to get the most out of the game we all love. My position is fairly new in the way that England Golf are now working. We now have a designated support officer for each county, whereas a year ago we did not. This was in line with our new strategy that was launched earlier this year and runs through to 2020. As part of this strategy, a significant amount of research was done that demonstrated that last year, 3.6 million adults played golf in England. 971,000 people over the age of 16 played golf at least twice a month, which is 2.2% of the population. It's the 5th biggest participation sport in England. UK golfers spend £4.3 billion a year on the game, which is 14% of consumer spending on all sports. The annual social value of golf participation in England, representing the cost of improved health, happiness, well-being and education performance, is £1.8 billion. So I think we can all agree there is a significant value to the sport of golf in this country, as well as historical value as well. From a personal note, which was another reason why I was so keen to get on board with helping Southwood, was the golf course that I was actually a member at and developed all of my junior skills at, Dunwood Manor Golf Club, closed in 2012. This was not a council decision, it was a privately owned golf club, but it might help you to understand some of the impacts that closing a golf course has on its members, employees and other people in the area. A number of people that I was friends with disappeared. I haven't seen them since. We all went to various different golf clubs. It was interesting to see the research that the council have done and presented in the report that talks about membership figures and green fees at other golf courses, where it seems that little information has been given about the availability of these in terms of timescales, when people can play as public green fees, the costs split over the varying time differences. It's very expensive to play at a weekend on a Saturday morning, whereas during the week it varies, and also the membership capacity that each of the other golf clubs are at. Not only to take on new members, but how this will affect existing members within those golf clubs. We work day to day with golf clubs, talking about membership retention and recruitment and how best to fit their membership numbers around the usage available at their course. Everyone wants to play on a Saturday morning. Not everyone can. which is why it is very important that we have a varying number of facilities that offer individual unique selling points to allow people to choose for themselves where they best feel they fit in. On top of this, I was a bit of a nerd earlier on, so excuse me for trawling through Rushmore's website to have a look at some of your policy documents. Rushmore Local Plan draft, I believe, was June this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. Policy IN1, Infrastructure and Community Facility, states that development is permitted where, point 3, development seeks to maximise the capacity and efficiency of existing infrastructure. Point 6, it can be demonstrated that the dual use of the community and recreational facilities has been explored. Point 8, there is no loss or reduction in capacity of existing infrastructure, including community facilities, unless replacement services provided that meet the need of the local population, necessary services can be delivered from other facilities without leading to shortfall in local provision, and it has been clearly demonstrated that there is no need for this facility, which I think if we look up there tonight, it's true that there is a need for this facility. Perhaps the council should not request this of their developers while seeking closure of Southwood, which might appear to be a breach of their own policy. Closing a golf club affects a large number of people in a large number of ways. Please consider the effects of this proposal carefully. Thank you.
Great, thank you, William. That was William Fry from England Golf. Next, I'd like to invite up Andy Short, please. Welcome, Andy.
Good evening. My name's Andy Short. I'm the landlord of the Plough and Horses in Farnborough. I've moved into the area about 7.5 years ago, having completed 25 years in the army. This is now my new home, as I say. Over the last 4 years, the Plough and Horses held its golf days, its charity golf days, and this is the point I want to. There's different avenues you've taken today, and the one I want to take today is the fact of the charity work that we actually managed to do at the pub. It's a hub of the community with my pub, and it's very well supported. And we like to support other organisations such as Southwood Golf Club. Over the last 4 years, the Plough and Horses had its charity golf day at Southwood, and like other organisations have done, including the Mayor of Rushmore, their own golf day there as well. Over the last 4 years, over the last 4 golf days we've managed to raise in excess of £10,000, which has been put back into the local community. Hasn't necessarily gone to the big charities. They mentioned about large amounts of money that have been raised for charity. It's gone back to the kids' football teams. It's gone back to netball teams, local churches, and gone back into the community of Rushmore. I've looked at the possibility of holding the annual event at other locations that are acceptable travelling distance from the Plough and Horses, because if you don't, people get lost on the way back, etc. And to my horror, it worked out that even after the massive subsidy that I received from the brewery, it's going to go from £45 to £65 minimum for a golf day. Consequently, I've canvassed all my competitors that take part in that. They've turned around and said to me, sorry, Andy, it's too much. Southwood Golf Club, as we mentioned before, is an affordable golf course, which is an affordable asset, I say, to this borough. I say, people mentioned already, it promotes community spirit. It also promotes health, etc., regardless of your age, gender, or whatever you are. It allows you to get out there and say, be a hub of the community, because by closing Southwood Golf Club, you are going to kill loads and loads of different hubs and people's social groups. I think rather than just putting this close sign on Southwood Golf Club, if there should be a compromise. And I'd like to refer you to Wimbledon Common Golf Club that shares the facility with horse riders, dog walkers, school activities, etc. It doesn't need to be just carte blanche closed. I think it needs to be, if needs be, there needs to be a compromise and a dog walking track around the outside if needs be. I'm going to stop there. There's been lots of things said by other people here tonight, but I would really would like you to consider this closing of Southwood Golf Club on a personal point, and also the charity work that's managed to be done by other organisations within this community. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. That was Andy Short from the Plough and Horses. Now I've got one other speaker that's not here, so sorry about that. Hope he's okay, and sorry that he wasn't able to make it. So we're now going to move into the next part of the meeting, which is essentially where our cabinet members who have been taking notes are going to be asking questions of officers. Now, for the benefit of the public, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask our officers around the table to introduce themselves to start with, and then when they answer, just to introduce them again, so members of the public can get an understanding of who we've got here and who the officers are that are giving us the advice and direction. So if I start from my far left with Anne Grooves on the end. Okay, are you hearing that at the back? Right. Okay. Okay. If we can just tap the. It's good practice for all the questions that are going to be coming from cabinet members. So. Right. There we go.
Anne Greaves, Solicitor to the Council.
Amanda Fay, Chief Finance Officer.
Paul Shackley, Chief Executive, Rushmore Borough Council.
We've missed out Chris Todd, who's extremely important. He is the clerk, so he's taking notes. Okay, so I've introduced Chris.
Ian Harrison, Corporate Director, Deputy.
On. It's on. You turned it off.
Ian Harrison, Corporate Director, Deputy Chief Executive.
Karen Edwards, Corporate Director.
Peter Amies, Head of Community and Environmental Services.
Nick Irvin, Principal Regeneration Officer.
Keith Holland, Head of Planning.
Louise Piper, Planning Policy Manager.
The last three officers that you heard from are our planning officers. Now I'm also going to get the cabinet members just to introduce themselves again, so that you members of the public that are here get an opportunity to understand who's here and taking part. You know me, David Clifford, Leader of the Council. Ken?
Hi, and I'm Ken Muschamp, Deputy Leader at the Council, responsible for business, security and regulation.
Good evening, I'm Maurice Sheehan. I'm the portfolio holder for Leisure and Youth Services.
Good evening, I'm Martin Tennant, portfolio holder for Environment and Service Delivery, which includes planning policy.
Good evening, I'm Barbara Hurst. I'm portfolio holder for Health and Housing.
Gareth Lyne, Cabinet Member for Concessions and Community Support.
Hold on, try again.
Paul Taylor, Corporate Services Portfolio Holder.
Right, excellent. Right, so that gives you the team that are here. So we've got our cabinet team, we've got our officer team, and what we're now going to do is examine the aspects of all the arguments for and against this, and then come up with a recommendation that we're going to vote on this evening. So, members of cabinet, questions to our officers. Ken.
I'm running low on battery there, so I'll be quick. Many of our speakers and the information we have refers to the situation that we should be challenging Natural England about the same. Can you please advise myself and the gallery that prior to the current portfolio holder, did we do such activity?
Keith Holland,
yes,
Head of Planning.
Keith Holland, Head of Planning. Under the previous portfolio holder, he tried valiantly to challenge Natural England. It is not an easy thing to do. I think some of our speakers tonight mentioned the difficulty in actually engaging with them. Certainly, the previous cabinet holder did try and challenge the issue, but of course, under his tenureship, the requirement wasn't as extensive as it is now. We were successful in identifying three SANGs that we have now effectively used up. Those three are Southwood Woodland, Roe Hill Nature Reserve, and then right in the north, the SANG that we share with Hart and Surrey Heath called Hawley Meadows. Yes, certainly the previous cabinet holder did challenge as far as he could. We also, some years ago, had a deputation up to DCLG, the Department of Communities and Local Government, where we were given an audience by civil servants up there. They certainly understood the issues that faced us. We received a good reception. We heard nothing following that meeting. The difficulty that we have with SANG is that it's not, whilst it is a relatively localised issue, it's not just Rushmore that is affected by this. It is 11 authorities in the locality, and to get 11 authorities to agree to change a system that is now effectively enshrined in planning policy is very difficult indeed.
We followed up. If I just interject here, Ken, we've had Leo Doherty, our new MP, write to Sajid Javid, the Secretary of State for Community and Local Government, and we've had a reply back. This is dated 6th of December. Thank you for your letter dated 23rd of October, and I'm just going to read the relevant paragraphs here. Thank you for your letter of 23rd of October, bringing your concerns regarding suitable alternative natural green space, SANGs, and Southwood Golf Course to my attention. I hope that you will appreciate that it is not appropriate for me to comment on specific planning cases. However, I can confirm that there are no plans to revise the current government position on suitable alternative natural green space, SANGs. I understand that this may be disappointing. However, this is due to the need to continue to mitigate the harmful effects of new housing development on European sites protected under the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2010. SANGs provide recreational space for local residents, diverting them away from protected sites as well as allowing developments to go ahead that might otherwise be refused because of adverse effects on the integrity of a European protected site. Natural England, the government's advisor on the natural environment, is a statutory consultee in planning applications likely to have a significant effect on such a site. Natural England endorses the concept of SANGs as a mitigation measure as it reduces the impact of proposed development. So that was a letter that we recently got, and I don't know if Keith made clear, I certainly did at council meeting, that of the 11 authorities, we are one of 3 authorities completely saturated by this particular directive. Maurice.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just on a related point, I just wonder whether Natural England have given an opinion on whether they would consider a golf course to be suitable as declared SANG, and also the compatibility of, as was suggested by one of the speakers there, of dogs running off the lead and using a golf course.
Keith.
Yes, Chairman. We did think about this because obviously it would have given us a good alternative solution. There are a set of criteria that Natural England apply when considering whether a land is suitable. And of course, the actual description of SANG, suitable alternative natural green space, it needs to meet all those criteria. And they say that it must be perceived as a semi-natural space with little intrusion of artificial structures, except in the immediate vicinity of car parks. Visually sensitive waymarkers and some benches are acceptable. All SANGs larger than 12 hectares must aim to provide a variety of habitats for their users to experience. Access within the SANG must be largely unrestricted. This is important. Access within the SANG must be largely unrestricted, with plenty of space provided where it is possible for dogs to exercise freely and safely off-lead. The purpose of the SANG is to create a semi-natural environment that replicates the experience of walking on the SANG, of walking on the SPA. Hence, Natural England advise that a golf course use is not compatible with a SANG, as there would be potential open access conflicts between walkers, free-running dogs and golfers.
And that's to do with the protection of the birds, the fact that it's got to be an area where you are able safely to let your dog off the lead, just to be absolutely clear about that.
Well, indeed. The idea being that you try to encourage people away from the SPA and use these areas. So it needs to be as free and accessible as possible.
Right. Martin Tennant.
Thank you, Leader. We find ourselves in a very difficult position at the moment because the effect of the decision tonight will detrimentally affect golf players in and around our borough and their community, interaction and support groups, their ability to exercise, etc. We need to understand the decision, why the decision needs to be made, and what time frame we have to make the decision and why. The joint group of the scrutiny panels of leisure and youth and environment made a clear recommendation that we should hold fire for a 12-month period to allow various options to be explored. And we've heard this evening very articulately from some of the presenters that they endorsed that proposal to hold fire for 12 months to allow continued pressure on DCLG and Natural England to make changes in the mechanism for mitigation using SANGs. So if you could just clarify what kind of time frame we've got available to us, why we have that time frame, and the consequences of not meeting that time frame.
Louise Piper.
Thank you. We're currently working on our new local plan for Rushmore. We've worked on that for probably the last 5 or 6 years, and we've got to a critical point in the preparation of that document now where it's heading for what's known as an examination. Natural England have objected to that plan on the basis of the fact that it doesn't identify adequate, suitable alternative natural green space to mitigate the residential development that is identified in that plan. We are heading for examination in the summer of 2018, so May time. So for us, we will be in a difficult position at examination if we are unable to demonstrate that there's adequate SANG to mitigate the impact of the development in the plan. There are a number of consequences too of not having an up-to-date development plan. The council would have far less control over the scale, location and type of development in the future. There is also a risk, the government's stepping up local authorities do not have up-to-date plans. It's stepping up its intervention in those. So there is a risk to us that the government could step in and take over our plan-making process, which is a position we don't want to be in. I think it's also important to, if we don't progress the local plan, we put at risk some of the good progress we started to make on regenerating the town centres. We will also affect the delivery of housing in the borough, which there's obviously a very pressing need, and delivering affordable housing as part of that. So for us, the pressure is on to resolve this issue in a timely way as soon as we can.
If I can just step in there with a question, can you just remind Cabinet how much saying we have, how many houses that allows us to build at the moment? So can we get some of the detail of how much saying we've got left, or how many houses we can build with the saying that we have so far? Nick?
Yeah, thank you. So at the moment we have the remaining 3 sangs that Keith mentioned earlier on. We have the Southwood Woodlands, we have the Hawley Meadows, and we have the Roe Hill sangs in place. Southwood has capacity for about 5 homes, Hawley Meadows 6 homes, and Roe Hill Nature Reserve approximately 1 unit of accommodation. We do have the Wellesley Woodlands, but that is ring fenced for the Wellesley development, so that's for the 3,850 homes that are permitted on that site. And we are actually in a position now, having agreed the memorandum of understanding with Hearts in relation to Bramshot as well. So there's potential capacity there for up to 1,500 homes at this moment in time. But it would only reach Farnborough, correct?
Right. So at the moment, we've got enough to build 11 new homes and 1 flat.
From our existing sangs, yes. I mean, with the exception of Bramshot, which is coming on stream.
Right. And we've got Bramshot. And then what I want to do, and I'll come to you, Martin, in a second. What I want to know is total number of homes that we're expecting to come forward in planning applications with regard to the developments that we've got for the regeneration of Aldershot and Farnborough.
Okay, thank you. Barry did a very good job of summarising where we're at the moment in terms of completions and those in the pipeline. I have slightly updated figures on that in terms of where we are as of the end of October. So we have identified potential for approximately 9,000 homes over the plan period, and that covers 2014 to 2032. We have so far completed around 6,000, or certainly allocated against sang capacity 6,000 homes. So that leaves us with a kind of ballpark figure of 3,000 homes still to mitigate with sang. In terms of a split and how that works with Farnborough and Aldershot, we're looking at around 1,650 homes in the Farnborough area and 1,250 homes in the Aldershot area. Now, the emerging Bramshot's sang would go some way to offset our Farnborough requirements with a minor shortfall.
So that's the 1,500. So
correct. But the Aldershot, I mean, the issue we have is how we provide the mitigation for Aldershot. We haven't mentioned this yet, but Blandford House is another application which is coming forward, which would potentially provide some additional sang to offset Aldershot schemes. But the way in which we're observing the figures is that we've still got a shortfall for around 700 homes in Aldershot, even if you take into account Blandford and what that potentially offsets.
Right, so there still is a shortfall for the 700 homes.
Over the plan period, yes.
Over the plan period, yeah. Okay. Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of questions. One in relation to the Memorandum of Understanding, which we've signed with HAR, which gives us access to the additional sang capacity for Farnborough of 1,500 homes. The Memorandum of Understanding, is it legally binding? Although there is no suggestion that they're not going to fulfil on their promise, I'd just like to clarify exactly how much leverage we have in this situation. And second question is to do with the timing, because we talk about over the plan period, and the plan period is a long period of time. So much muted discussion about the need for SANG and how imminent that might be. So obviously the crisis element in SANG relates to Aldershot, as in, Memorandum of Understanding covers Farnborough, or the majority, with a small deficit. So Aldershot, how close are we to needing to have SANG available for redevelopment in Aldershot? What kind of timeframes are we talking about?
Chairman, I'll pick up the Bramshot question, and Nick will do the second question. So we have a memorandum of understanding with Hart. It is not a legally binding document. It is an understanding. I have no reason to believe they won't honour it. But the allocation of SANG is at their discretion. So the way that would work is that the developer would approach us. We would hold pre-application discussions. Once we got to a stage where we felt that there was a policy compliant scheme, so it complies with all our other policies, and of course it's in the Farnborough area, so that it's close to Bramshot, then we would effectively give them a letter from us that they can take to Hart, and they would effectively purchase the use of part of the Bramshot farm for SANG. As I say, I have no reason to doubt that Hart wouldn't honour that, but it is not within our control. It is dependent on someone else being able to provide the developer with SANG.
On the points with Aldershot, we are at a position now where we can't permit any schemes in Aldershot Town Centre. There is a requirement for SANG immediately in that respect. In terms of our aspirations from regeneration perspective, we are looking at the galleries and Union Street as our two key projects in the town, and the local plan earmarks around 630 units of accommodation coming forward on those two sites. The council's done a lot of work so far on Union Street East from our perspective, and we're well aware that the galleries are working behind the scenes, the owners of the galleries are working behind the scenes to get hopefully a planning application in place early next year. Their intention is to have public consultation after Christmas. Subsequently, probably we're looking 6 months down the line for them to be in a position to submit a planning application. On the point of submitting that planning application, they would need to demonstrate to us that they have the appropriate mitigations in place. Now, to a degree, we could look at Blandford House as helping to offset that requirement, but that doesn't go far enough to actually offset all of our aspirations for Aldershot Town Centre. So there is a requirement for something else.
Right, Morris.
Yeah, I just want to underscore that point and seek clarification that at the moment we've got no available SANG to grant planning applications in Aldershot. Therefore, effectively what it means, if we defer this for a year, we cannot grant any planning applications in Aldershot for 12 months.
Yes, at this moment in time, that is correct. We have the planning application submitted for Blandford House. In terms of determination, probably looking February, March time for that going to committee. We don't know which way that will go, but at this moment in time, yes, we do not have an option available to us.
Right, Gareth.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Gareth, 1 second. Did you indicate, Barbara?
I did.
All right.
Ladies first.
Then apologies. Barbara.
Thank you, Leader. My question relates to something that was mentioned earlier in connection with delaying for a year, and that is this proposal to change the way that housing needs are assessed. Mindful that we have an allocation pool, a housing allocation pool of 1,200 who desperately need rehousing. We have all our temporary accommodation is fully occupied, and 1/5 of the residents in Rushmore who live in private rented and social rented housing are overcrowded. I wonder if we could perhaps have some clarification of the possible implications should that reassessment occur.
Louise. Sorry.
So referring to the government consultation on the new methodology for assessing housing needs to inform local plans, there's a couple of points about that consultation. It is a consultation, and on that basis, the methodology may well change. We don't know when we're going to get the final version, although it is anticipated towards the end of March 2018. The issue with that is that even with a new methodology, the parameters that inform that are subject to change. It is also a minimum number, so whilst you have a starting point, you would also then need to consider a number of other factors such as housing need, affordability, and the need also to regenerate the town centres, which is reliant too on delivery of new homes. In addition, if we were to wait for that methodology to come out, we would have to revisit the evidence base relating to the local plan in its entirety. It would require a lot of work going back to do that. And it is likely that on balance, actually, the housing number wouldn't be significantly different because it's about coming up with a plan that's sound and robust and meeting housing needs. So actually, there wouldn't be benefit in waiting until that new methodology is confirmed, and it would in fact probably be far greater risk to us in terms of getting an up-to-date plan in place and retaining control over development in the borough.
Okay. Gareth, just 1 second. I'm going to get Paul and Morris. Was this a point that you wanted to make?
There's a number of points, so I'll let them come in first.
Okay, fine. Thanks. Paul.
Leader, yes. I just want to say, so from what Barbara just said, accommodation is needed anyway. It isn't just dictated. This is my assumption, I'm presuming. I just want confirmation of this. That accommodation is needed in the borough anyway in order to meet the housing needs here. It's not just dictated figures by government, because obviously we do have the figures dictated to us or allocated to us by the government, but it's not just for that reason we have to build all this accommodation. I say accommodation, not housing.
Absolutely not. There's a couple of drivers, and that's need and regeneration. I mean, there's two drivers for it. Yeah. Morris.
Yes, thank you, Leader. There was a comment made earlier in one of the presentations about not seeing queues of dog walkers at our parks and open spaces. I just wondered whether there were any figures available that says per X number of houses you get X number of dogs, since dogs off leads are the problem on the lowland heath. I just wondered that we've got a problem now, whether with a new dog population coming in with all these extra houses, how much worse that problem is going to be.
Right, Keith.
Chairman, there isn't a ratio of dogs to people that we could work on.
We've had, I believe we've had figures on those that use the existing sangs, haven't we? There's Peter, you've been sitting there quiet.
Yeah, yes, Chairman.
Number of people that are using existing sangs?
Yeah, we have the Blackwater Valley management team look after both the Roe Hill and Southwood, and for Roe Hill they have sensors there. They've averaged from the main entries 87,000 visits a year, and for Southwood 74,000 visits a year.
And they were on behalf of the public, may I ask, were they counting dogs' legs or humans' legs?
Those were a combination of people on bicycles, joggers, walking dogs, etc. So it's all people going through the area.
Right, okay. Okay. So we got some figures. They don't seem to have the confidence of the public, but we've got some figures anyway. Right, Maurice, Gareth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. So a number of questions. We're talking about the status of a number of the different SANGs across the borough, potential SANGs. Briefly, officers mentioned Blandford House. I understand that's in for planning application at the moment. So is that certain to get planning permission? And if so, when would we expect that?
Thank you, Chairman. The application that we have from Granger, who are the developer, the principal developer behind Wellesley, comprises a proposal for a housing development of around about 150, 180 dwellings, together with an amount of land that can be used as SANG. That SANG would, of course, serve the housing that they are proposing to build, but there is surplus capacity. And they have indicated to us that they would be willing to use that surplus capacity to help mitigate new housing in Aldershot Town Centre. It clearly is a benefit to them to have a successful town centre so close to their principal development. However, there are a number of things that need to be pointed out. The first is, of course, that the SANG would not be within our control. It would be within Granger and MOD's control. And in the same way as we have potential future difficulty in controlling allocation at Bramshot, we would have a similar situation at Blandford House. In terms of the application, it is not straightforward. It's quite a complex application. It's quite a large application. We are commencing the consultation on that now. We know that in particular there are a number of issues about access. So the Hampshire County Council, as the Highway Authority, will be looking very carefully at the proposal, and it is by no means guaranteed that planning permission will be forthcoming. Obviously, because of the prize, if you like, of SANG, it's a very important application for us. And we will endeavour to overcome any problems that present themselves during the determination of the application. In terms of timing, I anticipate that application will be determined possibly around March, may run into April. Unfortunately, it's often the case with complex applications, particularly where you need to overcome objections, that they take a little bit longer than a standard application would.
Thank you. That's very comprehensive. That doesn't quite fill you brimming with confidence about the certainty of that particular SANG coming forward. Obviously, hopefully it does. I think that it would be very beneficial to the area around there. I'd just like to go back again on the consequences of delay, because this is something that's that the joint panel were very keen on and came up in last week's council meeting. It really strikes me as the nub of the matter. So,
and we need to be clear on this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've addressed the fact that there are no SANGs available for Aldershot at all at the moment, and that the cost in terms of officer time. And I know I've been involved in the local plan working group for a number of years. I know a lot of work has gone in. That's obviously there's going to be a certain cost attached to that as a council that we've really got to bear in mind, especially at the current time. Another big concern I've got here is in terms of the policies that hang off the local plan, which give us really, I speak as a previous chairman of the planning committee. I know how important it is that we've got something to be able to stand up our decisions on and to be able to base planning decisions on. And as I understand it, would officers agree that it's potentially much more likely that we could end up with, in effect, planning decisions by planning inspector, much like we had at the Hammer Blackbird in Farnborough? Is that correct?
The longer we take to adopt an up-to-date plan, the greater risk we have of losing control, because the planning policies in that document will be deemed to be out of date. So with the core strategy that was adopted in October 2011, so that's already 6 years old, and that's deemed to be beyond. It's okay. It's still a a plan that we can use and is a starting point for considering and assessing planning applications. But the longer it goes on, the greater the risk there is in terms of up-to-date policies.
Thank you. I've got to admit, I'm very concerned about that. I know that we've not really got as many tools as I'd like as it is with our planning committee to be able to make sure that we get good development and prevent bad development. So the consequences there could be huge. We could have the likes of hammer blackbirds replicated throughout the borough. That would be incredibly concerning.
Well, it's even more serious than that, and I'm looking for disagreement from legal, from what I'm about to say. Anne's looking worried. But as I understand it, if we default, the local plan isn't adopted and it goes into free-for-all, we're still under the South East Regional Plan, and Natural England have objected to any development in the South East region. So consequently, it goes to default, and Natural England would oppose any development because the mitigation is the same.
I think you're partly right. The South East Plan is a historic document now. It is the origins of this policy back in 2006, and it has been enshrined in subsequent plans. But the problem is that without the policy and without the mitigation, we can't say that there's been avoidance of the problem. So the planning authority would have to do an appropriate assessment every time it approved a planning application, and Natural England apply what's called the precautionary effect. So if there's a chance that it could adversely affect the SPA, then there's an adverse effect and you can't allow planning permission. The whole SANG principle works on the basis that it's avoidance, so that you don't have to then apply the appropriate assessment as a planning authority.
Right, so essentially an agreed mitigation with Natural England.
There's a difference between avoidance and mitigation. Avoidance.
An agreed avoidance.
Yeah, avoidance means that you don't have to apply the tests in the regulations for appropriate assessment. Mitigation is, what is in the policy subsequently.
Right. Okay, all right, thanks for that clarification. Right, okay. Yeah, microphone. We're getting it.
Okay, I think I'm back. Yeah, so
right. It's off again. Turn it on again.
The technology is being fun this evening, isn't it? So just to be clear, this sounds like the impending development of Aldershot with phases due next year would not be able to go ahead in the current situation. One question I'd like to ask, because I'm really concerned about any proposals being put forward about reducing housing allocation when we know there's such a profound housing need for all types in our borough. I really wouldn't support any reduction there. Can officers give us some data on the level of housing need, just to really emphasise what I think is one of the biggest challenges we're facing as a borough and, in fact, as a country?
Louise?
In terms of the evidence that's informed the figure in the local plan, we've got what's called a strategic housing market assessment. So that looks at a number of factors relating to identifying housing need, such as affordability, people in rented accommodation, people unable to get on the housing market, and also projected population growth as well. And that document identifies that in Rushmore there's a need for 436 homes a year added to our housing stock every year of the local plan period. That's a robust piece of evidence on which we're basing the local plan, and we feel confident that is a positive response in terms of meeting housing need and helping to address housing needs in the borough.
Barbara.
Just a very quick question, also on the local plan. I wonder if you could tell us, please, how much time has gone into the formulation of this local plan, and the cost should it fail, and if possible, the additional cost of any subsequent appeal.
In terms of time, I mean, we've been working on drawing up a new plan since post the adoption of the core strategy, so probably 4 or 5 years. And there have been some changes to the government's approach to plan making. So whereas before we had a core strategy that was a strategic document, and we were going to prepare a more detailed document to support that, the government framework changed, and we now produce a single local plan that sweeps up the strategic policies that were in the core strategy and then the detailed development management policies. Because of that, it's a broad document which covers many issues from the strategic to the detailed. So we've had to invest a lot of time, officer time, in drawing up those policies, in working with key stakeholders. We've also worked with our neighbouring authorities, Hart and Surrey Heath in particular, in terms of a joint evidence base to make sure that is robust. And obviously there's been a cost to that in terms of officer time over the 5 years, and also preparation of the evidence base, where we've had to bring in some consultant support as well. Yeah, for us to stall at this stage, which is a very critical stage, would be, when we have a plan that we feel is sound and can get through the examination and can provide a really robust framework for Rushmore's future to 2032, it would be, a frustrating situation for us to find ourselves in, based on the time and money we've invested so far.
A ballpark figure of how much money you have,
I think
public money has gone into this.
Yeah, I think I don't want to be misquoted because I haven't got the figures in front of me now, but I think we did some research into this. I sat down with our accountant and looked at it, and I think it's been around 1.4 million, so it's not an insignificant amount. That's because it's been 5 or 6 years worth of officer time moving this document forward. So yeah, we don't don't want to be in a position when we can't get this plan through and adopted and provide a firm planning policy framework for Rushmore's future.
Right. So just to be clear with planners here, that even with the capacity at Blandford House, this is not a decision that we can delay, given the homes that we need to deliver in the regeneration.
That would be our advice to you, yes. If we delay for the period that was suggested for 12 months, that will effectively push us into a new regime of local planning. One of the speakers earlier on mentioned the likelihood of a new national planning policy framework. We would effectively have to abort the plan that we've currently got and start all over again with using a fresh methodology and producing fresh evidence to support a fresh amount of housing.
And what impact would that have on the regeneration of Farnborough and Aldershot?
Well, obviously, significantly delayed, and also mean that we will be open to planning by appeal, as opposed to controlling development within the borough.
Right, okay. Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. Planning by appeal. We've faced numerous planning appeals over recent history. We've been successful in some and not successful in others. I know it's a broad brush figure I'm looking for. Those which we haven't been successful in, any idea on cost per failure? Typically, say the Pam and Blackbird or one of the more recent.
Chairman, we don't have any figures that I could quote on that. I mean, could go away and come up with some figures, but I don't have any figures before me now.
Okay. I mean, the key message is that it's not a decision we can defer. We don't have enough saying. If we are minded tonight to close the golf course, what I want to know from Peter Ames is where we stand with regard to the closure of the golf course and working with the local golf club and etc.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The tender for the golf club is due up on the 1st of April 2019, so we have around sort of 15 months or so. And clearly, if we were to try and close the golf course earlier, we would have to liaise with the current contractor, Mac Trading, over the consequences of that. Clearly, there are golfers there as well, and we do know there are other golf courses in the area that are looking for memberships and do encourage casual play, but these are more expensive, and that will clearly be an issue.
Yeah, as we've heard in the presentation. Ken, then Paul, then Gareth.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to pick up on the comment that Mike made about expensive, limited membership. They're too lengthy or long. Limited non-member plan I've put there. I don't understand what that means though from my notes. Can you give us some idea of our local golf courses? And by local, obviously I'm talking the Army golf course, and I think probably Hartley Whitney. What discussions have we had with them? Have they given us any idea of how their costs vary from ours? What capacity they have to take extra players? I did, and Will, you might remember, I did send you an email asking for this information back on the 7th of November, but you sent an email to us, so I sought the information from your good self. But okay, so we'll use this opportunity if possible. I'd like to know, what we've done to try and understand what the options are.
Yes, if you look in the report on Appendix 3, we have identified 4 other local golf courses. We have shown the price of those golf courses, and as you can see from the paper, they are more expensive than the Southwood Golf Course. We have contacted them around memberships, and they all have memberships available, and they all do allow casual play. That's as far as we've gone at the moment in terms of our follow-up with those golf courses.
Supplementary on that?
Yeah, of course.
My microphone's
You're
working.
on. You're on.
Can I suggest then, if we are minded to shut the Southwood facility, that we would find a way for our senior residents that are current members of the Southwood Golf Club, that we find a way of helping them make a move if need be.
And that's something we would have to explore as officers with each of the golf clubs concerned, and clearly there may be financial implications, and that would be one for members to consider.
Paul.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I mean, I think this is a decision which...
Mike.
Sorry.
Yes, we can just speak into the mic.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
This is a decision which I think very few of us want to take at all. Talk about being between a rock and a hard place. We seem to be between a rock and the rock being natural England, and several hard places. Quite honestly, it's probably the most difficult decision we've had to face of this kind for the borough, for our residents. We don't want to take away what is obviously from the presentations from the golf people. A good natural, a good leisure facility, no doubt about that at all. So none of us really like Sang's issue. None of us, I think, appreciate natural England, but they are there, and there's nothing, obviously, as I think from the evidence presented tonight, that we can do about it. I'm pleased to hear Peter Ames there saying about some discussions with the other golf clubs, and I would really hope that we as members will play our part in making sure that we lean on them, I suppose, or discuss in detail with those other golf courses, if this does have to go ahead, better terms or terms that will be advantageous for our residents, especially the senior residents, but also those, we've heard about it's good for aspirations of younger golfers as well. So I think it's beholden on us to do what we can, all of us, members, not just the Cabinet, but the other council members as well, do everything we can to support the officers in the work that they're undoubtedly going to do as well, if this happens. But obviously, we have done and will do everything in our power, I'm sure, to do the best for our residents in all areas.
Okay, good. Thank you. Morris.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to pick up on a point that was raised in the presentations about charity events, and I just wondered whether any discussions, even at a preliminary stage, had taken place with any of the neighbouring courses to see whether those events could transfer over to there.
Yeah, no, I haven't done anything like that at the moment, Chairman, but clearly this borough is renowned for working with local charities to raise money, and we do a lot of things across the borough for them. And if there are organisations that are looking for golf days, again, it's one for members to consider and for us to liaise with those other golf courses to see if we can make sure they take place.
Right. Gareth.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Leader, and I'll pick up where I left off. So obviously another cost that we've not considered yet of any possible delay is, of course, the cost to the people who are going to be without homes, especially those who are profound housing need. And that's something which a year can actually seem quite a long time to, especially those who are living in cramped accommodation, and that is a significant portion of people who are renting in our borough. I want to pick on a few other things. So obviously I agree with what's been said that in terms of we've clearly done all we can to challenge the policy and are making representations through our Member of Parliament and directly as a council. I think we do need to keep on going on doing that regardless of the decision we make this evening. To Morris's point, I understand that some progress has been made on the Mayor's charity golf tournament. Is that right? And if so, I think it's very important that we do extend the negotiation and the relationships that we've got with these facilities to support other golf tournaments and charity days to go ahead. I'd like to have that reassurance from officers at this stage.
Clearly, there are a lot of charitable events that take place. They raise a lot of money, and the Mayor's Charity Golf Competition is one of those, which we would want to see continue. And again, we would work with other courses to see which of those we can secure, and hopefully they can continue.
Thank you, and I think that's very important. And obviously, using the relationships that we've got, we can hopefully get a very good deal for those events. That we definitely would not want to lose them. I want to come back on a couple of other points. So there were a number of questions raised, but in the presentations about potential inaccuracies, which is concerning to me because obviously we have to rely on the quality of this information that we're given. And I believe the ongoing £40,000 cost to the council of the golf course of the year was queried. Can officers come back on that point, please?
That's factual information that's in our accounts. We have £40,000 a year that the council bear the cost of. That's made up of rates of 28,000, repairs and maintenance of 10, and insurance and marketing of 2. We receive a very small sum as a return from Mac Trading, who operate the golf course. And I can inform members that once we look at all the redistribution of the rates, this council gets a very small sum that's left out of that.
Thank you. Another question which was raised was about the assumed occupancy rates. Again, can officers come back to us on how reliable they think the figure that we currently have in our draft local plan is on that?
Yes. The point that was raised in the presentation was that we have this 2.4 level of occupancy with our dwellings. That's very much a rule of thumb that we apply. When we actually consider planning applications in detail, we do break them down by their type of unit. So for a 1-bed unit, we apply 1.4 occupancy. For a 2-bed, it's a 1.85 occupancy. So if we do have a mix of a scheme which comes forward, which is a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom units, we wouldn't be applying the 2.4 occupancy level to that. We would be applying what we understand to be the mix. So it would be somewhere around the 1.9 occupancy level that was referred to in the presentation. So we take each planning application case-by-case basis, and we actually drill down to the split of housing rather than just applying an arbitrary 2.4. So we are already taking that approach, which takes us away from the 2.4 occupancy, which is given as a standard to give us an idea of kind of ballpark figures.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm going to start winding things up. because we need to move to a recommendation. Okay, so was there an important point that you wanted to make before I start winding up, because we need to make a recommendation? Okay.
There was, Chairman, if I may. Obviously, we've tried to dig down in as much detail as possible to the presentations that we've seen tonight, the taking into account the petition, etc., etc. Is there anything you've seen which we haven't flagged, which we've potentially missed, within the presentations, and we haven't asked you about to clarify? Is there anything we've missed there?
Right, officers?
I think it's been a very extensive look at the issue. I suppose during the course of the consultation there were a number of questions that we were regularly asked, and if I can just remind myself of those. For example, are there any other suitable tracts of land owned by the council that could be used for SANGs? Well, we have carried out an exhaustive search of all our land opportunities in our ownership in terms of using them as SANG, as indeed we did with Southwood, as indeed we did with Roe Hill. You'll appreciate, however, that we are a very small borough. Beautifully formed, but we're very small. And we don't, like a number of other adjoining authorities, we don't have that additional land capacity to be able to search out for new SANGs. I think there was also a question that we were asked fairly regularly about what's it going to cost local ratepayers for the land to be turned into a SANG, and it will cost the local ratepayers nothing, because the financing of setting it up and then maintaining it as SANG would be taken from the developer when the developer were building their new housing.
I think another one was that I've heard regularly was the fact that in the long run we could end up building on Southwood. Can we just clarify the position with regards to the covenant on Southwood, please? Oh, sorry, looking the wrong way.
Do you mean the covenant on the golf course?
Covenant on the golf course,
Yeah.
Anne.
There is a covenant that would prevent us from building on it without actually paying back to the people we bought it from a sum of money, and it wouldn't be acceptable in planning policy terms in any event.
Right, so absolutely categorical, no building on Southwood Golf Course.
Plans, and it would cost us a lot to do so, little to gain from it, and it's not the problem that we need to address.
Right. Okay, now I'm going to bring things to a conclusion. Just to remind Cabinet members and members of the public what we're doing tonight. So what we're doing tonight, Cabinet is recommended to consider the following in determining what action to be taken for the future of Southwood Golf Course. I'm reading it so I don't miss anything. The Council's ability to secure an up-to-date local plan, which is going forward in March, and the ongoing regeneration of the town centres and affordable and other housing which is reliant on securing sufficient SANG. Next, the deliberations and recommendations from the joint meeting of the Environment and Leisure and Youth panels, which recommended we defer it for a year. I think we've discussed that extensively, and it's clear we cannot wait a year listening to our planners with the plans that we've got. Feedback from the consultation we've had, and we've had the full debate in full council. So I'm going to ask members to propose a... Gareth.
Thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off mid-sentence, but I've got a proposal I'd like to make. I'd like to start by saying that I've been hugely impressed by the quality of debate that's taken place this evening and in the lead up to it. I've been impressed by those golfers from my ward that I've met, who have been unfailingly courteous, despite the fact that people clearly care very, very strongly about this emotive issue. I've also been impressed by the people who have been on the opposite side of the debate. For example, a group of mountain bikers who I know have been equally adamant that they'd be keen to look at a different leisure facility being in that space there. Ultimately, our job is to choose, to govern is to choose. And I am really disappointed in the way in which discussion has focused on delay up until this point, because we've got to make a decision one way or the other, and that is apparent to us. It couldn't be more clear. The costs of delay one way or the other are going to be huge. We have to decide, and my proposal, if we were not to decide, we'd be failing in our duty to our residents. It comes down to that. My proposal, therefore, would be as follows: that the Southwood Golf Course be closed to provide sang to mitigate the impact of new housing on the SPA, and that power be delegated to the Chief Executive to decide the date of closure of the golf course, dependent on the provision of new sang capacity at Blandford House. The necessary actions be taken forward to make the land suitable as sang, and the management plan be brought forward to Cabinet in due course. In the meantime, officers should continue the dialogue with government in an attempt, and with Natural England in an attempt to address the issue. Finally, that arrangements be made to provide support and advice to users of the golf course living in the borough of Rushmore as to other options available in the local area.
Right, is there a seconder for that? Morris, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, if I may, I just want to make a few general points, really, Leader. 50% of walkers on lowland heathland are accompanied by a dog, and up to 90% of those dogs are off the lead. Up to 14% are running out of control. So that's the issue of what we're trying to protect. Disturbance exposes eggs and young birds to a greater risk of loss to opportunistic predators, particularly corvids, that's crows and magpies to you and me. And Natural England demonstrate that breeding success can be significantly improved when dogs are controlled. Another factor with dogs on our lowland heath, and let's remember that these are nutrient poor areas of land, is that dog waste contributes to nutrient enrichment of these areas. You may laugh, but it's actually a fact. So they are damaging the natural environment. Now, as a young boy, I used to play on the land, which is now Southwood Golf Course. Then it was farmland with hedges, ditches, and crossed by several paths. A place to run about, a place to ride our bikes, a place to let off steam, somewhere we could play without causing a nuisance to our neighbours. Local residents made use of the land to walk and walk their dogs. We heard, or we saw on one of the slides there, a comment from England Golf and their impact report, suggesting that golf was actually on the increase. I took from that report the statement that said the percentage of golfers in England who are now members of clubs is dramatically up. This suggests that although fewer people are playing golf, those who take up the game of golf are now more likely to join a club. So I would dispute that fact on that slide. Now, last week at full council, I mentioned that 297 rounds of golf were played at Southwood in the previous week. If we break that down a little further, on Monday that was 33 rounds played by members of Southwood Golf Club or their guests. There were no casual visitors. On Tuesday, 37 club members and 14 visitors.
What the weather was like.
Perhaps we could just remind those members of the public gallery, this is a meeting of the Cabinet and not a public meeting. That on the Wednesday there were 39 club members and just 5 visitors. Thursday, 33 club members and 7 visitors. And Friday, 37 club members and again just 7 visitors. Now Saturday, which we heard this evening, was the most popular day to play golf. 25 club members and 9 visitors. Sunday, 35 club members.
Can we just moderate the language in the public gallery? It really doesn't help.
Now, Leader, I freely admit that this was the last week in November, and that had we taken the figures over the summer, then I suspect the figures would have been substantially higher. But I suspect the ratio between club members and casual players would remain fairly constant. So, yes, there are regular players at Southwood, but it is a small number of regular players. Now, according to the British Golf Industry Association, 8% of the adult population play golf at least once a month. Translated into Rushmore, that would be 62,400 rounds of golf a year played at Southwood. We're not even close to that figure. So we know that the numbers playing golf have fallen. There are no longer long waits at golf clubs as there were in the past. And I am satisfied that there are plenty of alternative sites close by to this borough. So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Leader, in the report, I think there were 554 respondents who said that if they'd give up golf if we close Southwood. My suspicion is that figure would be significantly less. We have an exciting opportunity here to look at alternate ways to use Southwood Golf Course. Walking dogs is but one measure. It opens up a whole range of new leisure facilities or pursuits that could be accommodated on this land. So I have to say that I am convinced beyond any doubt that closing Southwood Golf Course and converting Southwood into a natural parkland is the right thing to do, and therefore I'm delighted to second the recommendation.
Right, so members, we have a formal recommendation. Those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Any against? Right, thank you. That is carried. So that is item 5, and that concludes the meeting. So that's the final meeting. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, members of the public, for joining us at this Cabinet meeting.